We've been talking a lot about dieting and all the fad shit that's out there, and people who are just following one diet after another, just getting themselves into this yo-yo weight loss crap, right? You have been through it. You're kind of a TV personality. You've spent some time in front of camera, and so dieting is not new to you, but you ended up figuring out that the way it's been done is kind of crazy. And so I love the title of your new book. I love the conversation that you've had, and going with the gut and understanding how to heal really instead of just diet is important. So I want to get into some of your story and how you got into that conversation to begin with.
Yeah, absolutely. We are a society that's focused on dieting, right? It's a result. How do I get to X? How do I get to that goal that I want to achieve? And what is the easiest, quickest way that I can get there? And I know for me, that's what I tried to do my entire life. You know, around 13 years old, my little tush popped out and had a rather generous figure, and it's not what I wanted. You know, every magazine that I was looking at, in all my friends that still had their boyish, young frames, I thought there was something wrong with my body. So I immediately said, something's wrong, I need to fix this. And what was the way that was being touted to me at the time through these magazines and the books? Go on a diet. So rather than listening to what my body needed, eating my mom's home-cooked delicious food, I was restricting, and of course then I would end up binging. So how little could I eat in a day and then be starving later, and then all goes out the window plus some. And so I just had this entire history of dieting and losing weight and then gaining weight, and judging myself by judging my value in this world by how skinny I was, and whether or not I was getting those compliments from the outside world. Oh, you look so thin, you look so great. And it's interesting because a lot of this, I feel, is the behavior around us and the literature we're reading, but also my father was a chronic dieter. And we were kind of partners in crime in this way. And he used to say to me all the time, do you want a pretzel, right? You want a soft pretzel from the park in the city in Central Park? And I'd be like, not really, but I knew he wanted it. Or he'd finish off my food, he'd finish off my plates. And so we really had this connection that way. And then he passed away when I was 17 years old. And after that, I learned that he was hiding so much of his diet behavior, misery, and what he was doing. We found out from his secretary that he was eating 2 bagels on the way home from work. So, and I was like, well, I'm eating the kitchen cabinets at night after work, and no one knows about my behavior and what's going on. And so eventually I found my way to nutrition school, and when I did, I thought I was a healthy eater because I was a dieter, right? I was eating turkey on whole wheat and a diet iced tea, and I thought that was health. And at school I really learned what it meant to crowd out all that noise and calm down about our food and our food choices, relearn the art of eating, because it is an art. It's a beautiful thing that we get to nourish our bodies every day. That's a gift into itself. And how I could take that and heal my own body, and then eventually support and heal women, thousands of women around the world that were coming to me with the same stories.
How difficult was it to rid that narrative? Because there's a lot of crazy that gets kind of juxtaposed on sane thought, and it's really tough, especially if it's in as a little girl, to really start shifting that narrative in your own head to say, well, now this is healthy and this is aberrant, right?
Yeah, great question, because I'm still working on it.
Sure.
And
Sure.
I know that the key for me and the key for these women is not to necessarily just answer their questions. What do I eat? Eat that. That's not the answer. My teachings and the way that I share this information is that we are our greatest teachers. And so in cleaning up the gut, we can then listen to our guts, and we know whether or not we should pick up that cookie or put it down. We can hear those intuitive hits. We can hear that voice coming to us again and again saying, that's not what we want to focus on here. I want to focus on my body, my breath coming back to me. And so my training is for these women is really getting into those small practices every day of how they can connect back into their own voice, back into their own body, and feel safe in doing so. So that all the noise here just starts to get a little quieter, and you might hear it, but you're like, I can choose in this moment to listen to that, or I can come back to my breath, my belly, my body, my needs. Just take a second, slow down, and hear what's coming to me and what I intuitively already know.
Beautiful. So there's been such a, I mean, this can go really kind of macro because there's been just this kind of inequality with gender, and we live in this crazy kind of masculine world, and women are traditionally kind of driven to try to behave like men and perform in corporations and do all this kind of stuff, and like that intuitive, deep intuitive sense that's just part of that kind of matriarchal lineage has been severed in a lot of ways, right? So
Yeah.
I love this conversation of getting in and healing the intuition with the gut and how those things kind of overlap, because that's a part of the healing that's also cultural, societal, and is a big part of a kind of a global conversation. But so how did you get into that? Like where did you turn that corner where when you started kind of healing your gut, that kind of innate sense started coming back?
Yeah. I'm getting so excited just hearing you talk about that, because I get so thrilled when I hear anybody else making that connection and knowing how important that is, and that how that's the place to start. So the reason and the place that I connected the dieting and all that with intuition and how to get there was because I know we were focusing so much on what to eat and there, but no one was really talking as much about how to eat. And so I learned that the women that were coming to me had very similar problems: bloating, heartburn, just feeling blech. And when I realized that I could show them how to eat, and we can get into that in a sec, then all of that started to go away. And then that's when those intuitive hits started coming more and more. So focusing on practices around how to eat, like breathing around our meals, actually looking at our food, right? No matter what it is. Maybe you're making a crappy choice, but did you look at it? Or you're just literally going like this, like looking at it, being like, oh, okay, I'm eating now. Using another one of our senses to signal to our body that we're engaged in this process and everything needs to come to the table, so to speak, for that to work efficiently. And then most importantly, chewing. And then using these techniques to heal the gut first, before we even talk about any of the hacks, any of the tricks, any of the cool food things we can do, which there's a ton, and I get there as well, but really just starting with these simple basics and having those symptoms of an unhealthy gut would start to dissipate and go away. And then once, the trick with working with people is get them feeling great right away, and then they can feel like they can do anything. So using those methods and just starting there, then we can get into a little bit more of the heavy lifting around food shopping and what it is that they actually are choosing.
I really enjoy this perspective because everyone's talking about, what do I buy at the store? How much coconut oil do I use? Give me a recipe for this, or a shake, or a hack for that. But what you're talking about right now is, it's so profound that we even need to be talking about it, right? It's like we're so time compressed that we have to stop and be like, did you look at your food?
Yeah.
Are you remembering to breathe? What the hell is that on your plate? So that's the starting point of your methodology, is what I'm hearing here. So let's talk about breathing quickly, because it's obviously a thing. It's a thing that most people in the West aren't trained to do, and it's kind of a problematic thing for people who just like, I can't meditate. How do you bring that to the table?
And right, even before meditating, just breathing.
Right.
Like meditation's everything, right? It's amazing, but even there's a step we can take back even before that and just talk about breathing. So first chapter in my book is breathe, because as you said, that's the foundation for everything. So really just coming into your body in every moment possible. Are you breathing from your belly? Are you feeling that sense of groundedness? And just taking full breaths and allowing that to be part of your practice in every way. And when I say your practice, I mean just your work day. Your meditation practice, of course, that's a given, but are you breathing in a moment when you get an email that's a little difficult? Are you breathing through a moment when you have someone sitting across from you and they're arguing or trying to get argumentative or coming from a negative place? Again, focusing on the how. So instead of the what am I going to say next? What do I eat? What do I do? How am I feeling? How is my body responding? And what's the one thing that I know I can do right now, which is just breathe fully and deeply and allow that to do the magic that it does.
It's funny because we take it for granted. Yet, if you don't do it for 2 minutes, you're in big trouble.
Yeah.
Right? So that's a great anchor. for anything mindfulness related. And frankly, I put it to you, that's probably why most meditations revolve around breathing, because you can't get away with it and it's real, right? Whereas half the food we're eating isn't real. So you come in and you breathe, and then you're talking about something that I am guilty of as well. I've kind of got caught in this like hustle bustle world that I had to come back from, which is slowing down to chew your food. And in your 20s, you get away with it because you have the acids and the enzymes and things to just break down this table if you wanted. But then it starts to slow down and you can't. So I love the conversation about chewing. Let's get into it.
I love the conversation about chewing. I say, like, I'm literally on a mission to teach the world how to chew. Forget everything else. Just focusing on the chewing has the power to change everything. So chewing our food, right? Exactly as you said, hydrochloric acid, we've got all this stuff going on. Stuff, and I say stuff because most people don't understand it. They don't know about their insides. They're not even sure where to locate their small intestine in a photo, and that's okay. Only in the sense of, if we just come back to this one practice, we don't need to think about as much as we think we need to think about of all that other stuff. So chewing, something that was never taught to us, right? When we were kids, maybe elbows off the table, or no one said, they said don't choke, maybe one of your parents or someone who's watching you said don't choke, but no one said, here's how you eat. You chew your food till it's completely broken down, because there's saliva, there's enzymes in there. Before we even need to pop a digestive enzyme, your body has this. Let's stimulate that. Let's use that. There's a reason that most animals in nature chew their food before they give it to their little ones. All this good stuff happening here serves a purpose. So just focusing on the principle of chewing your food until liquid, or at least till mush, or as much as you can, and that includes soups, like let them hang out in your mouth a little bit longer, every single thing that you're eating. And this is a practice. This is something that has taken me years, and it is a huge piece of my mission, but coming back to this again and again and again. And I'm always asked whenever I speak, I give presentations, in my coaching, what's the number one thing that I can do to lose weight and feel better? And I always say chewing. Chew your food until liquid. And women come to me after a month or two and they're like, I lost 10 pounds. I just did that and I lost 10 pounds.
Can we talk about that for a second? Because that seems so fantastic, right? It's like, what are you talking about? I already chew my food. You're like, well, you kind of chew your food, and then your stomach has to do the rest. And then that, like, the energy that you could have extracted didn't happen, and you had to store things. So let's geek out for a quick second on that, because that alone is, I think, missing from the conversation.
Yes, and I love that you go there too, and you know about all the geek out information. I was reading your book and I was like, oh yes, thank you for providing this. Thank you for explaining this, because it's such a crucial piece to understanding the whole puzzle. So yes, exactly what you said. Our stomachs, our organs, everything that's happening down here in our entire digestive system gets overtaxed when we just chew. How do we typically chew, right? And swallow. Our bodies are not designed that way. Even back in caveman days, breaking down meat, that is why our teeth are shaped the way that they are. They're designed to completely chew. That's why we have saliva that gets triggered to break down our food for us. And when we don't engage in that part of the eating experience, first of all, we're eating way faster. Right? Everyone talks about this idea, this principle of mindful eating, which I love, but it becomes just a principle. It becomes this thing outside of ourselves. I want that. How do I get that? But really, instead of thinking about how I get the thing, just come back to your body again, slowing down, chewing each bite till completely liquid. And guess what? You're going to give your body enough time to understand that, not that it's full, but that you've started to have enough to eat. So you don't need to focus on that full. You can just focus on, oh, I'm starting to feel satisfied. I can take a minute here.
That's interesting, because there's also this kind of satiety gap, and like all these scientists are trying to hack into leptin and ghrelin and all these things to be like, how do we deal with satiety? What if the problem was that we're just chomping and swallowing the food so fast that the brain can't trigger to be like, hey, she's had enough? Right? And chewing is where we got that.
And food used to be scarce, right? This was the thing you had to go out and get. You had to hunt it. You had to forage for it. You had to grow it. So, of course, our bodies are going to mirror our environments. So they're not designed to do things like that fast, our eating process. And think about how many times a day you're consuming food. And if you're doing something that many times a day, that many times a week in your lifetime, and you're not doing it correctly, which is, again, is to slow down and chew your food completely to liquid before swallowing, think of everything else that could be potentially set off from that in the wrong direction.
Yeah.
And your life even, like think about where you're setting your life off. From that.
It's a profound metaphor, right? Like we're all so stressed out and so wound up, and we spend so much time worrying about the weight we need to lose while we're eating and looking at our Facebook feeds and being completely mindless about what's going into the body in the first place. So it just seems like a weird disconnect that we could bring together, and I think just based on that, we can just be like, all right, high five, you got it. But then there's other principles that I know, through your training that you've worked on. And one of them that is critically important, there's been a lot of work on this over the years, and it's about hydration and drinking and being supportive of the hydration that's necessary in the gut. So let's unpack that a little bit.
Yes, so water. Most of my clients' digestive problems comes from the fact that they're just not drinking water in the morning. And I like to use this metaphor, it might be a little gross, but hang with me. A boat going down a river needs water to go down the river. Mm-hmm. If you just picture a boat in a dry stream, and in this metaphor, the boat is your poop that needs to get out of you, it's not gonna go anywhere if there's no river there. So providing that river first thing in the morning, right when you get up. And a tip with this is I like to recommend getting really large mason jars, 24-ounce mason jars, filling them up with your filtered water preferably, putting it on your nightstand before you go to sleep. Don't drink it before you go to sleep, you'll be up all night peeing. But having it first thing in the morning, you don't have to think about it. It's an automatic go, grab, and go on with your day. And even I've got my husband so trained on this that I, of course, find his mason jar glasses finished in the bathroom in the shower because he takes them in there and finishes his water while he's showering. Fine, great. What a wonderful side effect, that I have to deal with. It's okay. I'll live with cleaning up his mason jars out of the shower. It's okay. I can handle that one. So hydrating your body first thing in the morning, like I want to say 6, 7, 8, maybe even 9 times out of 10, that will that will fix your morning poop problem.
Great.
Right there.
I want to talk about the morning poop problem because most people feel that having a bowel movement a day is like high five city, whereas in the old days when we were having enough water and fiber, it would be like 2 to 3. We'd have a bowel movement around every major meal. And so how much of this this boat not floating creates that kind of backflow and the issues that you used to have, right, getting into this mess? Mm-hmm. And how many of your clients have had this, I don't feel well because my food is getting stuck? Mm-hmm.
That perfectly goes into the next principle that I teach, which is flow, and the idea of flow and what it means to have flow in your body. A lot of us are not making that connection between we're not pooping, therefore we're not having movement in our lives in other areas that we want to. So movement down here in our bowels creates movement out here. So think about something that you'd like to move forward in your life. The best place you can start is with moving your bowels more. So more processed foods in our diet are going to lead to exactly what you said, not enough fiber, vegetables, roughage really that our bodies need to have a proper poop, essentially. So one thing that I like to do is we have a lot of negative connotations around the idea of pooping even, right? Some people watching this might even be like, I can't believe they're even talking about that, or maybe your audience is all for talking about that, but they're not still having that conversation maybe even with their kids, or, how's it going in the bathroom? What do you need in there? Do you feel calm? And so I really recommend that we rewrite our poop story. So take out 3 pieces of paper and write your old poop story, what that used to look like for you. So you're someone who could only go at home. You never go when you travel. You barely get, you can barely go, or it's something you don't even want to talk about, your past. And then take out another piece of paper and write how that is affecting you or stopping your day. What you might not be achieving, right? You feel sluggish. You just feel frustrated in the morning. You don't feel like you're getting things done or there's enough movement. And then on the 3rd piece of paper, go ahead and write your new and empowering poop story. So what you want that to look like. So you're someone who wakes up and goes with cozy, oozy regularity every morning, and then maybe after lunch and another one in the evening, and then what that does in your life and how that reflects back and mirrors in your life and all the other things that begin flowing and moving because of that.
It's funny that as adults, we need to have this conversation, right? But it is a huge issue for millions and millions of people who don't poop, right? And have weird hang-ups around public bathrooms and all of it.
You know what, with that, like, enough with the germs. Your cell phone is so much dirtier than that toilet. My husband is aghast that I sit on toilets. I sit on toilets, everyone. Sit on the toilet. It's okay. It's not that dirty. Do a little wipe. Like, get comfortable in bathrooms. You're only going to be at home, you know, maybe once, maybe twice a day where this can happen. This is a part of our lives. Let's make an adjustment. Let's be okay with it. Let's change the conversation.
Yeah, and it's like the brain overriding the physiology and getting us to, I mean, I can't even think straight if I haven't pooped. You know what I mean? Like, it's just, it stops the flow of vital energy in the body. The body is supposed to evacuate so that you have an appetite for food and the next meal and information and love and life. And I mean, you're supposed to take things in and move them through you, right?
Exactly. And yeah, it's toxins. Your body's trying to get rid of what it no longer needs. Let's help that a little bit.
You know, on that point, I just want to kind of note that I keep having this. I was just down in LA last week, and you know, LA is so cool, right? And so everyone's cool, and now no one diets anymore. They all detox, right? So it's like, oh no, I'm sorry, I'm detoxing right now. And it's like, I don't know if you know what that means, because detoxing is more than just drinking juice from like the latest cool spot. You need to be pooping, right? If you're not pooping, you're not detoxing, period. And so part of that is the body's detox pathways. Where else is it going to go? It has to go out the poop, the pee, or the sweat. Sorry, if it's not getting out of you, you're not detoxing.
Then you're just holding and you're not releasing.
So
that's why I call shedding instead of detoxing or losing weight. It's allowing your body to naturally release what it's craving and so hungry to release. And I'm glad that you brought up juicing, because juicing can be wonderful and it works for many, many people. But I know something that we definitely both agree on is warmer foods, lots of soups, using those as healing, detoxing methods so that our bodies and our intestines, everything can calm down and allow it to release what it's designed to release.
Yeah, I love soup. I come from a tradition where like my Taoist stuff is all very like, you know, medicinal soup oriented, and when you get sick, mom brings you chicken soup. So soup is our way of having almost pre-digested food. I mean, so let's just say you haven't chewed and you're trying to like learn that. You can kind of hack that by getting some soup in now, so at least you give your body a break, right?
You're such a smarty. I love these. Like, here's how we hack these very simple, basic principles in such a simple, basic way that's fun, is focusing on soups, right? You don't have to do anything else. Don't worry about it. There's wonderful vegetable-based soup recipes out there. I've got tons. I know you've got tons. And really just allowing your digestive system to take a break that way, and allowing your mind to take a break. You know, so much of what you focus on is teaching us how to live better. And we can only do one thing at a time. So if we're focusing on our meditation practice, maybe we're focusing on a digital detox, it helps to hack our food during those periods so we can just focus on one simple thing. So just having soups for a day or two and adding in some steamed vegetables is a wonderful way to do that. And it works, I like to say, it works for everyone. I know we shouldn't talk in absolutes, but I don't know, a single person where warm, simple soups that are pre-digested with all those vegetables and nourishing elements doesn't do the job. In some way.
It's like a dietary IV in a lot of ways, right? It just gives your body a break. And you know, my whole thing around this, and I hold this down because I feel like we're all compromised in a lot of ways, right? Like we're all beat up. We've all, you know, I don't care where you came from. You might have grown up on some sort of commune where all you had was like, you know, super organic vegetable, whatever. But the rest of us had our share of Cocoa Pebbles before we realized it was a bad idea, right? And so we're behind the eight ball on this one. And so having soup and eating like a sick person once in a while, just to give your body a break, is wonderful. Why wait until you're sick before you have soup? Just have it a little bit and just get out ahead of it. And I'm a big fan of that. So I gotta say, like, you and I definitely unite on the soup thing for sure. So we're nourishing our body by taking pre-digested food, and that's kind of a big part of your gestalt. And then when we do that, then what goes in the pot? Right? Like, how are we going to get the right ingredients in there? Because people say, well, I don't even know what to put in a soup.
Right, so really keeping this very, very simple. Vegetables, just start with vegetables. And the secret to making soup taste great is less liquid. A lot of people don't realize this, right? We're pouring on boxes and buckets of broth and things like that, but really start with that vegetable base, onions, garlic, celery, carrots, throwing anything else in there, and then just enough liquid to cover, and then adding your flavoring in. So thyme, oregano, anything that's in season or spices that you like, and you basically have soup. And you can put that in the blender or use a little hand blender right in the pot. Really very, very simple. And then, of course, bone broth. Right, you mentioned grandma's chicken soup earlier. What we, it's definitely the warmth of it and all the good stuff in there, but really it's the bones. That's what was healing us. That's what was making us better from being sick. So having some bone broth, if you're comfortable with the animal part of it, is really nourishing for the gut. It heals so many issues. It's wild what just 1 cup of bone broth a day can do.
It's so funny how Grandma's ancient wisdom is now back at the forefront of medicine.
Grandma's so cool.
Grandma, she held it down.
Grandma held it down, but Grandma also had a lot less crap to deal with too, probably, right? And I just mean crap in the sense of technology and all that stuff that's happening around us. If she wasn't working outside the home, if her job was in the home and to take care of her family and cook, that's what she was focused on. And maybe listening to the radio at night, depending what area you were in. There wasn't television, there wasn't getting back to emails, there just wasn't all the stuff that we now have to deal with. So how can we take some of those principles that worked for Grandma, worked for that generation, and combine them with what we now do have to, I don't like to say deal with, but flow with?
Sure. Well, life is busier. So let's get into that real quick, because people are intimidated by cooking and food in general. So I make soups now all the time. It's like bang, 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 chuck it all in there, throw in whatever your base is or your broth, and turn it on. And then you walk back and it's food, right? It's not that complicated. And I grew up not being a cook. And so if I could do it, anyone could do it. Give me how long does it take in prep and stuff? And I know you have soup recipes that I'm hoping you could share with our audience with all this, but how long does it take to just put a soup together?
Anywhere between, you can even buy pre-cooked roasted vegetables and throw them in with some broth. I mean, it can be that simple, anywhere between 5 and 10 minutes and an hour. And I have a great soup recipe in my book, maybe I'll share with you guys, that really hacks how restaurants get so much flavor, and that is flavoring the oil first. So having the oil heating on the stove and adding in some garlic and your spices and herbs and letting that really allow the flavor come through, and then adding everything else. And a good little soup trick always is, a lot of people might not like this vegetable at first, but if cooked in soups, it's super sweet, is fennel. Fennel is a great secret. Add it to almost any vegetable-based soup or even meat-based soup, and it just does a little something magical in soups. It's like using good quality sea salt or using tamari, right? It brings out a little bit of that special something. Tamari is a wheat-free soy sauce, but adds that little yummy hit of flavor. So I really recommend that. And then when it comes to the food and shopping, keep it simple. I'm not talking about rocket science here. We all know by now, vegetables, quality protein, having a good amount of fat in our diet. And I really train my audience to think vegetables first. So if you're having breakfast, what vegetables am I having in my breakfast? And then building the rest out of that. And if you're an oatmeal for breakfast person, put in some baby spinach or baby kale. You won't taste it. Lunch, dinner, what are the vegetables I'm having there first? You can't go wrong with focusing on that.
Vegetables are tough. I gotta say, I used to be a granola person, and then I was eggs and sausage person, and you can't have that every morning. And so my biggest struggle for breakfast has been finding a place for vegetables. So now it's stir frying some broccoli in there, some just something, and a lot of times you just chuck it in the blender and drink it. So finding a relationship with vegetables in the morning, how did you do it?
I did it through Superhuman Breakfast, which a colleague and mentor of mine, Laura Hames Franklin, came up with. And it has 4 elements on the plate, and it basically covers everything your body needs in the morning. It's a warm, grounding, nourishing breakfast. It's 2 eggs poached, so cooked nicely, evenly, and simply. And then greens, so pile of dark leafy greens, and you can vary those week to week. Sweet potato, a little bit of chopped up sweet potato. Some people, carbohydrates work in the morning, some don't, but experiment with it. Find one that works for you. And then the last element is sauerkraut. So always having some raw fermented veggies in there, and then of course a little bit of fat drizzled on top, some avocado. I love pumpkin seed oil. And when I have that breakfast, I don't have it every day. Sometimes I go smoothie, sometimes I do bone broth with a scrambled egg in it. Again, throw in the baby kale, baby spinach, shortcuts, keeping it super simple. But when I have that superhuman breakfast, I feel superhuman. Like I can do anything that day.
Yeah, most people do not get enough protein and do not get enough onboarded nutrients in the morning, and then they wonder why they're at the coffee pot 4 times that morning. And so if you're not getting it, you need to have your body weight in in kilograms is the number of grams of protein you need to have every day just to physiologically function. So if you weigh 90 kilos, that's 90 grams of protein, which means if you're not getting about 30 in the morning, you're already behind, right? And that's a very difficult proposition for people who've just had oatmeal. But I think we could both promise you that you will feel so much better.
Yeah. And even in your oatmeal, you can scramble an egg and heat it up in the oatmeal. Have you ever done that before? You don't even taste it. It's delicious. So
well, I just got off oats because of the gluten kind of connection.
Yeah.
And it's weird because you grow up eating cereal. What the hell do you eat, right? And it's that weird kind of transition to get out of the habits of what used to equal your food routine. And that's why I like where you're coming from on the start, which is breathing and mindfulness, because it's like, holy crap, this has been so habituated. I don't even know how to think about food because I've just been on like autopilot for a couple decades, right? And that's, I think, where a lot of us are waking up.
If we trained ourselves into cereal, we can train ourselves out of cereal.
That's it. That's it.
I don't know where cereal, I mean, I do know where cereal came from, but like it was the easy, quick thing, and we're used to that cold, sweet.
Yeah.
And if we're not having that grounding breakfast, and find something that works for you, even if it is just a cup of soup you take on the go, find something that works for you. Otherwise, you are going to turn to the granola bars a couple hours later at 10 a.m. and you're going to wonder, why am I reaching for the sugar? And then your whole day is just off in a direction that you never intended for it to be off in. And then your life starts to feel like that.
Yeah, it's funny. I had a moment last week. We had some company over, and they brought over some like some steak, and so we had some leftovers in the morning. And I was having this like, what do I eat moment, right? And I was like, what is wrong with you? So I cut up some meat, warmed it up, took some butter and some broccoli, and just had like broccoli meat, and I was just like raw all morning, right? And it was just like breakfast of champions, right? Right, and if you don't eat meat, then there's pea protein. There's all kinds of protein substitutes, but you got to get it in the morning. But you got to love food again in the morning. And so I want to kind of turn that corner and talk about what that love of food looks like, because you came from a history of like fearing food and like, you know, worrying about food, and you turned that corner. And I think that's a really important corner for us all to turn.
Yes. So I even though I had so much fear around food, I've always been a self-proclaimed foodie. I was very lucky that my mother actually, when she met my father, didn't know how to cook at all. She couldn't boil potatoes. So she went, and she was living in Montreal, and she trained with this very famous chef, Paul Martin. And so she learned how to make coq au vin and soufflés, but she still barely knew how to make an egg for breakfast. So I was having these very elaborate, lavish meals as part of my weekly routine. And because I love that food so much, I realized like, this is how we care for each other. This is how my mother's showing her love for her family. This is how my father's showing his love for me, even though it may have, you know, been a little in the disordered department with the pretzels and stuff like that. But that was how we connected, and that was how we found our love. So I found myself actually some months ago at brunch with a girlfriend, and I kept pushing my food on her. And I was like, oh, you have to have this. She's like, I'm good. I'm like, wait a second. This is how I'm trying to show love. So we can have a healthy element around love and food and connection, right? Being around the table. But then also, how are the other ways that we find love that are not food related? So how do we show love to ourselves? How do we feel about our bodies? How are we speaking to ourselves? What are we doing every single day? Not just most days, not some days, but every single day to be like, hi, I love you. Thank you for doing all that you do. If you even just look at your hand sometimes, like, look at this thing. This is a miracle. You know, look at this. Like, look at all this does for me. It types, it texts, it picks up the phone, drives, you know. Just taking a second to say, how can I show this hand, this body, this person, just a moment of love, whether it's a bath or just saying even just saying thank you. Even at the end of every night, just go, thank you. is an expression of love and connects back to everything, right? Our love of food, love of family, love of connection, and love of our own bodies.
Let's connect that back up with our gut, because I think the intuition, gut axis, and that self-love is really this kind of virtuous cycle that then starts kind of building on itself, right? Like once you can check in and take care of the inside, then the inside takes care of you, and then you feel better, and then you have a better relationship with food. So that to me is a really important starting point, because everyone's looking outside of themselves for answers. Robin, tell me what to eat, right? And it's not that way. That's why the diet industry is so big and why it keeps growing every year. Because if it actually worked, it wouldn't be growing year after year, because the conversation is wrong, right? It's like the healthcare industry. We have the best healthcare in the world and everyone's dying of obesity and heart disease. There's something missing. So I like this something missing component to this.
Yeah, so absolutely, there's something missing there, and it has everything to do with loving up our gut and our intuition and the core of that. So let's break that down a little bit. Especially for women, we have loathed this part of ourselves. We've loathed our stomachs. It's very common, or I would say, who have you ever met really that a woman wasn't adjusting herself or fixing her shirt or hoping that something would hide or making a joke about it, or, oh, I'm so full, and all of that. So really, loving that part of you and letting it out, part of the breath, like letting our tummies be what they are and saying, I still love you. Even though you're hanging over my pants a little bit more than I'd like, I still love you. And that's actually been a really interesting journey for me where I'm at, because I'm currently pregnant.
Yay.
Yay. And I know, like most of the time it's yay. Sometimes it's like, oh my God, what did I do? But I trust the universe until it's all good. I'm starting to get flushed, I'm sure.
It's beautiful. It's awesome. And
it's crazy.
It's crazy. It's
crazy.
life-changing.
So having people remark on my stomach, I forget that I'm pregnant. To me, this is, yes, there's a baby in there, but that's still my stomach. So people saying, oh, your stomach's so big, oh, your stomach's so small, I immediately go to that old 13-year-old brain that's like, oh, I need to diet, or I'm not skinny enough. Oh, they're looking at my stomach, and I'm like, hang on a second. Like, this is part of you. This is carrying a baby. This is beautiful. And so how can we carry that over for women when they're not carrying a baby and say, this is your stomach. Look at all that it does for you, and it's beautiful too.
I like that. And breathe into it and love it and stop for a second.
So it can love you back.
Yeah.
Like that's how it works.
It's a weird impulse. It's a long road to hoe, but like I think it's the way home, is to turn our perspective around and look at our own kind of habituated reactions to things and really get in and love your gut and heal your gut and all that.
Yeah.
So I love it. I love your book. I love the conversation you're having. Tell our viewers and listeners where they can find your stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. So gowithyourgutbook.com has everything there. I've got amazing extras, the good poop list. I've got an extended good poop list there, and then of course information about my book, and then really some extra pieces about that intuitive piece, because that's a whole other deeper conversation. And then along with these principles, I do really love to get practical. I'm based out of New York City, and my women are like, yes, I'm hearing you on the chewing, but how do I do that? I'm hearing you on the soup, but I do need the recipes. I'm hearing you on that gut part, that intuitive piece, but how do I get there? So really combining that emotional support along with the practical tips. So everything is at gowithyourgutbook.com, and
Great.
you can find out more there.
It's one of my favorite pieces about you is you are talking about this real touchy-feely stuff, but you also come from this sassy New York City background where you're busy and you're in the middle of it, and so you're living that life and you're pressure testing it inside of the biggest urban environment we have here in the States. So no, you're rocking it. I love it. Congratulations on the pregnancy. And can't wait to see you doing like mommy recipes for this baby.
Oh, yes, indeed. Thank you so much. Yeah, I'm really excited about just sharing this and being with you and having this opportunity to share this with your viewers and listeners and audience, because we are so lucky to be in this role, to get to be educators, teachers, and really just live our lives the best that we can and share that.
Love it. Well, and it's pressure tested with you too. I mean, you live that life of the 13-year-old, and now you're on the other side of it, so you have the moral authority to speak of it. So thanks for being here.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.